Hello, good morning, everyone. At long last, we are able to do this webinar. It took us 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, Sunell, to get going because we had so many load shedding issues. But at long last, we never gave up. We are here. So without further ado, just a little bit of background. Like you know, my name is Karen Visser. I'm one of the co-owners of Biolink Attention Training here in Bloemfontein. I know Sunell very well because she's really been very helpful with my own children. I always tell people when I refer people to you, Sunell, is that what I love about you is that you don't teach me, you give me practical advice and practical things to go do and try immediately, and that helps so much. So I'm not going to tell your story, you're going to tell your story. We've known each other for many years, actually. So without further ado, everyone, Sunell Wiehman.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I agree, it's been long overdue, né? So, but we made it here today, so I'm very glad. And greetings to everybody. Welcome to this session. I'm just going to quickly, you'll see on this one side of your screen, it says Colorful Hearts. That's just the name of my psychology practice. And then today's topic, Karen, you can just do the next slide for us. Today's topic is basically jumping from C to M. So this is not some English lesson. This is a mindfulness-based approach to cope with your anxiety. Okay, and like Karen said, I'm a very practical person. So the things that I will be talking about today are things that I know myself has helped me quite a lot. And there's just my details and my assistant as well, who compiled this PowerPoint for me. So just a thumbs up for her as well. Okay, so what does the C stand for and what does the M stand for? So the M obviously stands for mindfulness. And I'm sure many of you or most of you have heard what mindfulness is, but we don't always know the how. Né? So today, like Karen said, I'm practical. I'm going to teach you or tell you more about the how from my own perspective as well as my patient's perspectives. Okay, so let's look at the different C's there on the screen. And it's interesting that all these, when I started to prepare for this webinar, I realized that all these things begin with a C. So that's why we call it the C times 3. Né? Okay, so first of all, you will notice that we're going to talk about different crisis situations. Né? And many of you will maybe know that picture. It is basically a kraken, or it's a giant squid trying to eat the ship, né? With its big tentacles. And then you will see cancer in the middle. I'm going to tell you a bit about those have been my battles. I've had to fight cancer twice in my life. So I'm going to tell you from a personal experience as well how mindfulness has helped me during my crisis situations. And then we have the lovely old Corona, né? Which has been with us. I think that's on everybody's lips. It's on everybody's minds. So of course, we have to talk about COVID or Corona and how it has affected us. And if you look at all these different pictures, it reminded me of something. Behind me, you will see I've got a box with a nice butterfly on. This is my coping skills toolbox. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about it later. But it reminded me, if you remember those sticky things you can get at the shops, né? Let me just bring it a bit in closer to the other side. Okay, can you see them? Okay, there it is. Okay. Those sticky things that you got at Checkers or Pick n Pay or one of the shops. So they reminded me of these sticky things because it basically sticks to you, né? And sometimes it feels like that first picture, like life is dragging you down and that you don't, you know, just as soon as you think you're floating again, it's dragging you down. So that's why we have the 3 C's that we're going to talk about. Okay, so we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the next slide is just basically, thank you, Karen. It's just basically, I want to tell you quickly my life story so that you have a bit of an idea, or a part of my life story, but a bit of an idea of where I'm, you know, who's talking to you today. So the person behind the psychologist, me. When I was 11 years old, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a very aggressive type of bone cancer. I only heard later on that I had a 7% survival rate, and here I am still today. So basically, they had to amputate my leg to save my life. My leg was amputated at my hip, so I don't wear a prosthetic leg because it's just way too uncomfortable. And I had to undergo chemotherapy as well. And I was placed in a ward with adults because there wasn't at that stage, it's many moons ago, so there wasn't at that stage a hospital specifically just, or a cancer ward specifically for children. But I'm actually very glad about that, you know, because often from suffering and from seeing things and from experiencing things comes a lot of beautiful things. And I looked at people, I looked at all these adults around me, and I realized that those with a strong mind and a strong spirit came out better on the other side. Even if they passed away, the last few months of their lives, they lived a great life as far as possible. And that was my first introduction to psychology, because I always wanted to become a medical doctor. And then I realized, you know what, I want to become a kopdokter, as they say in Afrikaans. I wanted to become a psychologist. So I wanted to help people to have healthy minds, healthy hearts, healthy spirits. It's often so cute that parents would often say, when they bring their kids to me, they would say, you're going to the heart doctor, you know. So but I'm not a cardiologist, just to be clear on that. But they call me the heart doctor, and that's why I've got my practice logo as well, is colourful hearts, because I love hearts. Okay, so yes, then I was introduced to psychology, and I was cancer-free for 30 years, which is in itself quite a miracle, because like I said, most people don't have a big, you know, even if they go through all the operations, they don't have a big survival chance. So I was cancer-free for 30 years. And in that 30 years, I lived my life. I got my degrees, I started working, I became a psychologist, I got married, and I've got a little one. We've got a little one who's 8 years old. So I lived a full, happy, healthy life. And in the year that I turned 40, I didn't get the nicest gift. I got the news that I have breast cancer. So, and again, it was a small cancer, but very potent and very aggressive. So I had to undergo a lumpectomy, which is luckily just removing the lump, but the cancer had spread to my lymph nodes. I don't do anything halfway. It seems in my life, I do everything full out, the good and the bad. So, but I basically then had to go for chemotherapy again, which affected my heart pretty badly. So I actually have got a bit of a weak heart, but I don't, or a sick heart, or whatever you want to call it, but I don't feel it, because I still believe the mind is even more powerful than the body, or your physical side. So I had to go through radiation as well, which also breaks you down. Those of you that have had cancer or had family members with cancer would know that it's quite a tough process to go through. And I still have to go for my checkups regularly. But I remember one of the oncologists walking into, and she's a very curious doctor. I love her. She asks a lot of questions. And I was sitting in the chemo room, and she said to me, so I suppose you're not working at this stage. I was like, no, I'm working. And she says, but you're probably scaling down. So I'm like, no, I'm working for a week. I basically take off just to recover from the chemo, and then I go back to working again. And I remember her looking at me like, really? And she said, and then she asked me, did my psychology help me through my cancer? And I didn't even have to think for a second. And I said, yes. And the first thing that came to my mind was mindfulness. And that's why I really, from a personal perspective as well, mindfulness has become a part of my life, my daily life, my patients' lives, my kids' lives, my husband. Everybody knows the mindfulness thing in our house, and it really works. So just to tell you that's why I'm talking about this today. So it's really something that comes from my heart. It's not just from books or anything like that. You will notice where I'm sitting, there's a lot of, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but a lot of fluffy stuff around my little fluffy toy as well. So it's a mindful space. There's not a lot of, books or anything around, academic books, so this is my mindful space that I basically just relax in. Okay, so Corin, we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so that is the definition of mindfulness. Okay, now that's the more That's the more technical definition. The definition I use with all of my patients and with children as well, it's the decision that you make to stay in the present moment. Okay, so if we think about the past too much, it causes a lot of sadness and depression because we can't change the past. If we focus on the future too much, it causes a lot of anxiety. And at this stage, a lot of children as well as adults, everybody's basically focusing on the future. My little one keeps asking me, when are we going to wear masks? When are schools going to be normal again? When will Corona be over? And I don't have all the answers. And that's why being in the present, and that's the only thing we are sure of is this moment. So being in the moment actually helps a lot of people just to stay sane, and not just sane, but to also actually have fun, even if times are difficult. So to live a full and a happy life. Okay, so you can read through the definition there. So it's very relaxed. That's why I'm sitting in a relaxed space. I'm sitting on my couch, actually, that my patients often sit on. It's non-clinging, it's non-aversive. So mindfulness is very calm. We don't force anything on anybody. The techniques I'm going to show you today, you're going to decide, do I want to use it? Don't I want to use it? I'm going to tell you the ones that work really well for me, and then we're going to take it from there. But before we go on, I just want to do a bit of a practical exercise with you. Like we said, I like the practical stuff. Okay, so wherever you are sitting, whether you're sitting on a chair or a couch like I am, wherever you are, I want you to place your 2 feet. I only have the one to place, but you have 2. So I want you to place your 2 feet firmly on the floor. So to place them firmly on the floor, if possible, I want you to go and sit on the floor. Please just don't go and sit on the floor if you've got back problems and you can't get up again. So we didn't sign any indemnity forms or anything like that. So, but I often tell why I'm telling you this is we call this grounding. So by just sitting and becoming aware of your feet on the floor, becoming aware of your feet in your shoes or maybe your feet in your socks, and then placing them firmly on the floor, it helps us to ground ourselves. And this is something your kids can do. My little one just said the other day, Shame, I told her to ground herself at school, and she said, Mommy, my legs don't reach the floor, so her legs, she's not so tall. So I said, okay, we'll try the other techniques then. Luckily with mindfulness, there's always something we can try if it works for everybody. Okay, so I want you to just ground yourself. If you can go and sit on the floor, go and sit on the floor. This is a nice technique as well. If your child throws a tantrum or if your child gets very anxious or has a panic attack, tell them to sit on the floor. Go sit next to them if you can. Ground yourselves. I always have a yoga mat or an exercise mat handy in my office. So when I see my patients becoming overly anxious, we sit on the floor. And if you think about it, that's what kids do. They play on the floor. When I see my little one is on the floor playing some sort of game or animal or whatever sound she's making me. So our kids are actually mindful, and we lose that along the way. Or they look at us and we're not mindful, and then they think the way we do things is the way it should be. Okay, so I hope you're sitting comfortably and you are now grounding yourself. So that's the first exercise that I want you to remember. And it's something that's possible for everybody. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, you can just click on it again. There we go. Okay, so most people, when they hear mindfulness, they have these pictures in mind. The one being this hippie guy from the 1970s. And the truth is, that's when mindfulness actually started. It did start in the 1970s. And for a lot of people, they think when we talk about something like meditation, they think you have to go and sit in the lotus position or go and sit in that position. But the truth is, mindfulness is not a religion. Mindfulness is a full-blown neuroscience. It was and is still scientifically researched, and it shows us that there's definite benefits, and I'm going to show you all the benefits later, but there's a lot of benefits in being mindful. So when you're going to go and you Google mindful, you're going to find a lot of, maybe some of the websites are going to talk about specific religions or specific, specific ways of doing things. And if you're not comfortable with it, then you close that one and you go on to something else. But mindfulness is basically staying in the present, getting in touch with your body, and getting in touch with nature as well. And whether you do it sitting in that position or just sitting regularly, it doesn't really matter. No. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, I just wanted to tell you, and this is just for interest's sake, the company Google, and apparently that's a very nice company to work for. And I mean, we all use Google. If you haven't used Google today or yesterday, then I don't know, né? But all of us use Google and all of us know what Google is. Né? So the founders of Google, they are two scientists. One of their employees came to them and told them about mindfulness. And they decided that after that day, they're going to send all the, when they heard it's a science, they were like, it was, it was sold. And they, after that day, they decided to send all the employees for an 8-week mindfulness training program. And they literally say that it really increases, the people are happy there, but it makes them even happier. It increases their job satisfaction, their productivity, they work together better. So if it can work for Google, I'm sure it can work for me and you as well. And I know it can work for you and me. Okay. The other companies that use it, Facebook, for instance, as well, send their employees, and there's other companies as well. Okay. So let's have a quick look at everyday mindfulness. I just want to, you can just click again, Karen. Okay. This is literally an MRI scan that was done. Now you can just go back again, Karen. Sorry. I've got Corin as my assistant because I told her when it comes to technology, and I'm very mindful about the fact that that's not my strong point, which is a part of mindfulness. Okay, so I call that yellow and green and blue and red brain. I call the pizza brain. That is a stress brain. Okay. So if you're stressing at this moment, that is probably what your brain looks like. Okay, those red areas there are, it's the primitive part of your brain. So it's basically, this is your head from the top, so that back area there is the primitive part of your brain. And that part of your brain regulates your emotions. But that part of your brain also can't determine what is a real threat and what is an imagined threat. And now with Corona, for instance, Corona isn't an imagined threat. So you can't tell somebody just to be okay and get over it or whatever. It's a real threat. So it means a lot of people are in, because that's your body's alarm system. So a lot of people are in fight and flight mode at this stage. And what happens is then your brain goes like people, people, people all the time. And your amygdalas, which are an important part of this whole process, that's your fight and flight centers. They're supposed to be as big as a peanut or a nut, or an almond. But when we get stressed, and I got this little old SpongeBob, SquarePants golf ball. Yeah, so you can get to not, but then our amygdalas become as big as golf balls. Okay, so, and where you are sitting, you can ask yourself, how stressed am I? Because there's a chance that your amygdala is a golf ball and not a nut. So we want to decrease the activity in that specific area, and we want to increase the activity. And you will see on the second slide that on the front part of the brain here by the forehead. And you can just go back again, Karen, thank you. That blue part over there, that is your prefrontal cortex. So that's your clever part of your brain. That's the part of the brain that develops last. So some people, or for most people, the development ends at about 25. So for those of us that are older, our brains are dying. But the nice thing about our brain cells, is that mindfulness has taught us that there's something like neuroplasticity, which means that your brain cells can grow back again. And mindfulness can help you to grow back those brain cells again. And that's the nice thing. Mindfulness can work for a 4-year-old and it can work for an 84-year-old. I've got an 84-year-old client that sits still on the floor when she comes for a session and she's stressed. She can sit on the floor and actually get up. So that wants to be done. So I'm going to show you, and you will see there stands, it says your brain 10 minutes, it's the same person, 10 minutes before meditation, and 10 minutes after that. So literally 10 minutes. And when people hear the word meditation, they get scared or they get upset or they are like, I can't meditate, I've tried to do it. The grounding that we did before, that's a part of meditation. You actually meditated a bit without even knowing it. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, please, Karen. So yeah, it's amazing just to see the brain, and they did thousands of those brain scans. Okay, then I want to talk to you a bit about feelings. Now we can go back again, please. Sorry, okay, there we go. Okay, you'll notice there in the middle, that little pink sign there in the middle. That is the pause sign that you find on a remote control, for instance. And that is what mindfulness means. Mindfulness means to take a pause out of your daily chaotic head and life and to get yourself in touch with what you are feeling, to get yourself in touch with your body. And there's a nice way to do it that helps both kids and adults. And I did this in a previous recording that we did, but Karen and I discussed it and she said, I must please do it again. So it's a box of Smarties, Let me just bring it closer. Okay, still trying to find, there we go. Okay, so there's the Smarties, So what I do with kids is and with adults as well, they like it too. So, but you can use anything. You can use, it must have different colors, So that's the most important thing, is that it has different colors because you're going to ask different emotions based on the different colors. So what I then do is I throw it in a bowl, and I would, for instance, use the blue Smarties to say that they are going to be sadness, and the purple Smarties are going to be fear, and then the yellow Smartie, for instance, is going to be happiness. So I use like I say, the Inside Out, the movie, I use those characters. And then basically what we do is I give the child or the client, I tell them, okay, close your eyes and pick a Smartie. And if they pick a blue one, they have to tell me what makes them sad. And I play along with them. So if you are wondering what's going on in your child's head, because our children are quiet for me in a sense. I had a mom the other day who said her child is not talking to her, and she's not sure what's going on in his mind. And when I started to talk to him, he said to me, he's quiet, but his head is busy. And I mean, he's a 12-year-old boy. And I asked him what his head is busy with. And we played this game a bit, even though we did an online session. We played this game a bit, and I could realize what was going on in his mind. And in his case, it was anger. It was extreme anger at certain people and certain events that had happened in his life. And then I could talk to the mom and say, listen, your child is, with his permission, your child is angry. We need to deal with this anger. And it's very important that you find a way where you can just communicate with your child and with yourself through playing. And if you, for instance, realize you are sad, then on my couch, I always have a fluffy pillow. And it's amazing in both my offices that I have, when the patients start to talk about things that really, and the children and adults, when people start to talk about things that make them sad, they would pick the fluffy pillow. I've got 3 pillows on my couch. They immediately take the fluffy pillow and they start to hug it. And this is sometimes all we need, is a bit of a hug, or like we have a soft toy. So and hugging this pillow is actually, I'll sit like this the whole day, so it's actually quite comfortable. So finding something that can, if you find that your child is maybe anxious, scared, sad, or yourself, find something that comforts you and that is soft and just makes you feel good. Okay, so that's where the feeling part comes in. So we can just move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's quickly look at the benefits of mindfulness. This is literally the physical benefits. It lowers your blood pressure, it reduces pain. We use it quite a lot. When I had pain with my cancer, I used it to reduce my pain, and it lowers your heart rate as well. So it even helps you to sleep better. So if your child is struggling to sleep or is struggling maybe with anxiety at night, there's nice techniques, and I'm going to show them to you now in a while. Okay, so, and that's beneficial for us older people as well, so to lower our blood pressure and all of that. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, please, Corin. Okay, that's all the mental benefits that it has. It fights memory loss, and a lot of kids, my little one, when she had to go back to school, she was actually quite scared. And the one day she didn't do so well in a test, and I'm very fortunate, she usually does quite well. And she said to me, "Mommy, I was so nervous, I couldn't remember." So and then I taught her, or I showed her the mindfulness skills again, because we have to do it every day, otherwise it's not going to work. It improves academic performance because the kids are calmer and more relaxed. It improves your brain functioning. We saw that it activates the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for concentration, problem solving, organizing, planning, focusing, memory. So all of those things that we need and that our kids also need. And then it increases focus and attention. I know there's quite a few people that said on the group that they have children that was diagnosed with, or have children that have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. So mindfulness actually works extremely well for these conditions as well. Okay, so we can go to the next one, please. Okay, and there's the emotional benefits, which is for me, because of my job, the most important. Not just my job, my passion. I love my job. It helps cope with anxiety because it brings you in the moment. It fights PTSD. So a lot of people suffer from post-traumatic stress because of an accident or something they went through, or even with Corona. A lot of people I've seen are actually experiencing stressful or post-traumatic stress. It fights depression. It helps to regulate your emotions, so it keeps you calm. It increases your self-awareness, so it helps you become more aware of what am I feeling. And I said to a parent the other day, because she said her child is very anxious, and I asked her how she's doing. And she said that she's very anxious. And I said, well, if you're very anxious, the chances are that your child would sense that, because kids are like sponges, so they would sense that, and they would then want to or they would then mimic your behavior, or sort of also feel very anxious, because our kids watch us very carefully from a very young age. They watch us very carefully. Okay, it calms the mind, like we said before. It fosters resilience or resiliency, so it helps people to bounce back quicker. If you practice mindfulness on a daily basis, it fosters resilience, and it helps you to bounce back quicker, and then it lowers the stress levels as well. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to do a bit of a practical exercise. I've seen below at the bottom there's been some questions, and I'm going to answer them at the end. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of mindful breathing today. So all of these activities that we are talking about today are things that you can do daily. Somebody asked me the other day, can I be too mindful, or can I do it too much? And I said that no, basically we can, there's nothing as too much mindfulness. So again, you see the pause sign there. So when it comes to breathing mindfully, and this is a technique I use every day. This is what I used when I received my chemotherapy as well. I would be lying in bed, and chemotherapy affects your concentration and your memory it gives you, like, those of you that have kids, I've had pregnancy brain, I'm sure. Chemotherapy gives you pregnancy brain as well. So it's like you get a chemo brain. You can't remember. I usually don't make notes when I work with patients. I make my notes afterwards. But when I had the chemotherapy, I had to tell my patients, I'm sorry, but I have to take a few notes today in case I forget it. But with the mindfulness, my mind or my concentration gradually increased as well. Okay, so this is a bit of a ritual that I do every morning. So I basically, before I get out of bed, I would lie in my bed still, and I would do, and this you can teach your children as well, I'll do a body scan. So I would literally start at my head, and it's almost like when I do it with children, I have a little flashlight, and I would sort of say, okay, as the flashlight moves over your body, and you can do it with your own child. Kids love flashlights or stuff like that. So you can move the little light and say, oh, okay, just feel, they can close their eyes if they want to. If they want to look at the light, they can do that as well. But you basically lie there, and it's as if you're examining your whole body. So you're scanning your whole body, and you're basically asking yourself, how's my head feeling, and maybe you've got a headache, and you didn't. When I have patients in my office and we do this, they often say to me, I've got a headache, and I didn't even realize I have a headache, and then we go through the rest of the body, the heart, what emotions are you going through, and you go through the rest of your body up to your toes. And for those few seconds that you're doing it, you are just focusing on your body. You're not focusing on anything else. And I know these things sound so simple. I work with a lot of professional people, with a lot of doctors and professors, and some of them, when I tell them about mindfulness, they look at me like, am I paying for, I'm sure they're asking themselves, am I paying for this? And then I tell them, just go and try this, just go, promise me you go and try this, and you will, there's method in this madness, and you will probably come back and tell me that it has worked. And like I said, I have quite a few professionals who do this on a daily basis, and sometimes just come in to do a meditation or a relaxation session with me. So meditation is not something weird or strange. It can be something like being in a relaxed position and breathing. Okay, so let's get to the breathing. So I want you to do this with me, please, if you don't mind. We are basically going to breathe in for 7 counts, and then there's going to be a bit of a pause, because when you breathe in, there's sort of like a natural pause, and then we're going to breathe out. When you breathe out, I want you to breathe out for 11 counts. Okay, so 7, 11. That's usually what I call it, 7, 11 breathing. So, or that's what it is called. The reason for this is, again, a physical reason. When we breathe out, when our out breath is longer than our in breath, there's more carbon dioxide or CO2 that is released. And the more CO2 that is released, it activates a part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic nerve. And that part of your nervous system calms you down. So I want us to try this quickly. So if you are willing to try it with me, and we're going to repeat it 3 times. Okay, so I'm going to close my eyes while I do it, because it just works a lot better for me. But I want you to also, if you want to close your eyes, you count for yourself. If you can't get to 7 and 11, if you can get to 4, 6, that's also fine. Okay, as long as your out breath is longer than your in breath. So we're going to do it for ourselves, and then I'm going to show you how I do it with kids. Okay, so here we go. 3 times, and I will open my eyes when I'm done, and then we can continue. Okay, so ground yourself again nicely. Sit comfortably. You don't have to sit up straight or anything like that. Just sit nice and comfortably, grounding yourself. And now we're going to breathe. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so what you would notice when you do that, I always want to talk slower when I've done this, but what you will maybe notice is that when I breathe out through my mouth and my nose, and it sounds like a sigh. So it's really like, eh? And often people sigh, and often kids sigh in my office as well. And then I'm like, is it so bad to be here? And then they're like, no, it's so nice because I can just let it all go. Ne? So teach your kids it's fine, to do it like that. The teenagers, usually in class, when they breathe out, they will go like, okay, so when I do it with kids, I have what I call a breathing buddy. Okay, so my breathing buddy is a bit big. His name is Jeffrey. So he's usually in my office if the kids are here and they don't bring I usually ask them to bring their own breathing buddy. So what you basically do is I'm going to use the smaller one. I think that's just going to be a bit better. So you and your child can both lie on your backs, on the bed or on the floor if you want to. And the child places the breathing buddy on top of themselves. And they like it if you have your own breathing buddy as well. That's why I've got Jeffrey. Ne? So then you tell them, okay, let's inhale. Ne? And when I inhale, what happens to the breathing buddy? It goes up. Ne? When I exhale, the breathing buddy goes down. And usually they focus on this little breathing buddy the whole time. And for those, you can repeat it 5 times, or how many your child can take. And usually your child focuses on that little breathing buddy so much that they forget what they are worried about for that moment. And us as adults as well. I mean, looking into these little eyes and this little nose, and just breathing in and out actually helps quite a lot. So this is the breathing buddy. So take your child, ask them to bring their favorite soft toy and practice this with them. Okay. So that is the little breathing buddy. And breathing is really, like I said, I do the body scan when I wake up in the morning. So just to, feel my whole body. And after that, I do the breathing. And I do it a couple of times, and I can really feel how my arms relax. And when you do the body scan as well, you might become aware of, sometimes I would realize, oh, you know what, I'm actually clenching my toes, or my hands are in, where the kids often, when they are anxious, check your kids' hands when they're sleeping. When they were anxious, it would probably be like in a fist, or when they were angry. So often when I do the relaxation and the kids are, lying on my couch, I would gently ask them to open their hands. And just that opening of the hands already makes them feel a lot less tense. So watch your kids' body language as well. That's very important. Okay, so we can move on to the next one. Okay, so the listening part that I want to talk about is extremely important. And I think before we spoke about the emotions, and I know last time a lot of people also asked, what do I do if my child is scared or anxious or whatever? The thing is, are you really listening to your child? Nee. What I have realized myself during the lockdown period is I would often be listening to my child, but while I'm doing it, I would be, quickly texting a patient and I'm hearing you, that type of thing. And what I do these days is I put my phone away. When my little one wants to show me something or tell me something, I take this and I put it away. Nee, I put it away and I get into wherever, if she's on the floor, I go and sit with her. If I'm really busy or busy with a crisis, I will tell her, Mommy will get to you. And then you must just keep your promise and get back to them, nee? Because they remember. And often, whether it's kids or grown-ups, when there's problems in a household, it's because people aren't listening to each other. They aren't hearing each other, they are really not focusing in depth on what the other person is feeling. So we need to have specific times where you just focus on the person in front of you, your child, your husband, your wife, look them in the eye and actually just listen without interrupting, without already thinking, what am I going to say, just by listening to them. And if your child comes to you and say, Mommy, I'm really anxious to go to school, or if you realize they're really anxious, to validate those feelings, to tell them, you know what, it's okay to be anxious. Under the circumstances, you are allowed to be anxious. I said this in the previous recording as well, that we must just let our kids know that any emotion is okay. It's what you do with it that's not okay. And that's where you come in as a parent again, to make sure that you are dealing with your anxiety, that you've got a fluffy pillow that you can hug, that you, by your behavior, by putting away your cell phone, because we are complaining that our kids are on their cell phones the whole time. What are we doing? Nee. So I usually work more with the parents than the kids, because I realize often when the kids have issues, the parents play a big part in that, and we have to start, to look at the parents as well. And just remember, nee, when I say that you as a parent are maybe not showing the right example, I'm not perfect. I don't always do the right thing when it comes to my child. So none of us are perfect, and mindfulness is very calm, and it's very compassionate, and it's okay to tell yourself, I maybe made a mistake. I yelled at my child. I didn't listen to my child, but to just know that you don't have to be perfect, and we shouldn't teach our children to be perfect as well. There's a listening exercise that I want you to go and try. There's a couple of listening exercises, but this one is quite nice. You can, for instance, go and you can take a walk around the block, and you can tell your children as well. Some kids talk all the time, I know, but you can tell them it's a bit of a game. So you're going to walk and as a family, and you're going to walk without talking. So you are going to just listen to, for instance, the leaves crunching, under your feet, or it came to yellow, beautiful birds in our garden this morning. So just be aware that there's these activities you can do over a weekend. It's not going to take up a lot of your time, but you can definitely then just walk with your children and your husband and wife and just listen to all the different sounds you can hear. And often when I do that, just by sitting in my garden as well, it relaxes me a whole lot. And spend lie on a picnic blanket, looking up at the clouds, cloud gazing. And the amazing thing is that besides focusing on the clouds or the beautiful blue sky that we have, or the sunshine, besides that just being relaxing by itself, when you look up towards the sky, you activate your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that calms you down. So when your child is anxious in class, I tell them, ground yourself. If you can, if you're not as short as my little one, ground yourself, look up at the ceiling, And my little one said the other day, yes, and then I can sort of swallow my tears as well, or, soak up my tears or whatever. So I was like, oh, yes, it has a double meaning, or a double purpose. So she would look up at the sky and I would tell her to breathe. What's also nice, what you can do with the little ones when it comes to breathing is when they breathe out, I call it fish breathe. So they sort of go like, for 11 counts, Or you can tell them it's like when they are, for instance, they're eating hot food and they want to get it cold. So it would be like, blowing on it. So there's different ways of helping your child do this. And these are very, very simple techniques. I think after today's session, some people are going to be like, really? But please, I ask you from the bottom of my heart, try these activities, the various ones. It doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost extra time. These are things we're doing already. We do sometimes look up at the sky. We do listen, but we don't always listen as we should. We do have to breathe, So these aren't things that we have to do extra, because often people would say, I don't have any extra time. And mindfulness, luckily, it doesn't have to take up any extra time. You're doing these things already. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, please, Corinne. Okay, so in summary, and I think I just said that actually, but you will see that little brain, he is sitting there all relaxed, and but what we did today is actually called brain exercise or brain gym as well, because if you want to have a beautiful body, you have to go to the gym quite often, if not every day, or at least 3 times a week, to get fit and to be healthy. When it comes to mindfulness, you have to practice this every day. So my breathing, I do when I'm in the car, wherever I am. I do it with my patients. I do a type of the body scan, a meditation, a relaxation every single day. And I promise you, when there is a day that I slip up or that I don't, maybe have to be up quick or whatever, or overslept, I can feel it. At the end of the day, I can feel I need a bit of extra mindfulness to just get me going again. Okay, so, and I just quickly want to show you, I said before, the coping skills toolbox. This is not my complete one. I just brought this one along for today, but it's basically a box that you take and you place various items in it that helps you to calm down. And this is a nice activity to do with your kids. And you must use your 5 senses. So you must basically have something in there that you can taste, like I've got a toffee in mine. And when you taste the toffee, luckily I'm a bit older, so I have to chew a bit slower. But I usually tell the kids, don't chew or just swallow that toffee whole, chew the thing, you know, and actually taste what you are tasting. So eating mindfully. Ne? Then I would usually have something in here like this soft, fluffy toy, something you can feel. Because I love hearts, this is like a little eraser, but it's nice to put in the palm of my hand and just touch it, ne? And sort of also like a stress ball, pushing it. So it's also about not just seeing or looking at something, but also feeling it and touching it. Ne? As far as listening is concerned, you can tell your child to make a list of their favorite songs, or you can make a list of your favorite songs that you like. And often when we listen to those music, we just, you know, feel better. And mindful listening is also listening to the instruments. So that's very interesting, is that you shouldn't just listen to the lyrics, you should listen to the instruments and see how clued up you are with instruments. Okay, so that's just another technique that you can try. And yeah, so your various senses, so make sure that you have things in here that something to smell as well, something that's nice. Maybe the Smarties, you can smell the sweetness, or you can put something in there that smells nice, like a little candle or something like that. And again, this is a very, very practical way. You can make a smaller box even that your child can have with them in their room. And when they feel stressed, they've got all their little things together that can help them to be mindful. And I also have one. So you're, as a grown-up, you're allowed to have your own one as well. Okay. So that's basically it from me. I just want you guys to go and practice mindfulness and to really go and try this. Nee. So hope you all go and be mindful. Nee. Thank you, Corin.
Thanks, Sunell. That was really very interesting. We've got a question here from one of our attendees. She says, or asked, to please explain how mindfulness can help and explain the correlation between anxiety, concentration, and depression in young children. And we see that, we also see it in our clients. We see this quite often.
Exactly. And I often tell parents, you know, that these conditions, anxiety, depression, ADHD, those are all like brothers, or sisters. They go together. So I, like you also say, I very seldom see a child that is only anxious and not depressed as well. So these all go together. So, but often there's a trigger, a specific firing order, we call it in psychology. So I often try to figure out which one is first. You know, that whole chicken egg thing. So with some people, you will find that the ADHD is causing all these other problems. So that's the main thing we need to, or not the main thing, but we focus when we get the concentration better with mindfulness techniques and the wonderful techniques that you guys use as well. Then the other emotions start to get better. Sometimes I see that somebody comes into my office, a child, and the mom says this child is very depressed. When I work with the child, I realize they are anxious. And so it's important that you get to the core emotion, to the primary emotion, as we call it in psychology, because you would treat, sometimes kids are very angry and aggressive. And then you would definitely treat an aggressive child different than an anxious child. So you need to, that's why I said before, it's so important that you try and figure out, you know, by playing a game or whatever, to figure out what your child, what is the biggest problem maybe that they are experiencing, or the main emotion, and to then find the right, when it's anxiety, you need to find out why are they anxious. And I always say that when it comes to emotions, the mindfulness techniques works for all these various emotions. So even people that are depressed, because remember, when we are mindful, what happens is you start to become aware, not just of your body, but you become aware of your thoughts. So your child can, for instance, then tell you, you know, when they are maybe relaxed and all of that, their thoughts would come to them, and they become more aware of the thinking errors they are making as well. And a lot of the times those kids will tell themselves, I can't do this, I can't cope with this. So often then, just by becoming aware of what your thoughts are, you can then help your child to change those thoughts and to say, you know what, I hear you, and you under the circumstances, you're allowed to be depressed, but let's look at the evidence. And sometimes when I work with kids, I will, if they are, for instance, depressed, I would say to them, okay, when were you not depressed? Tell me about a time in your life when you weren't depressed. And they would tell me about a time in their life, and I would ask, what did you do differently then? And then, of course, we built the mindfulness into that. So we have to first be mindful and first be aware of what we are experiencing before we can actually work on it, you know. So I don't know if it answers the mom's question, but I think if, you know, whatever the emotions are, mindfulness works for all of them. The research proves that many times. So if you find a specific routine if she finds a specific routine that helps for her child in terms of mindfulness, I'm sure those emotions, the intensity will probably become a bit less. It won't take it away, but it will maybe just be, because remember, if we are mindful, I always say this is the part of our brain that's not so clever, and near the back part of our brain. So answers and their own options as well, which we actually want for them in the end.
Yeah, and I want to actually, you know, now just tell parents as well, is that, and we are 100% aligned, Sunell, if we talk about you need to go to the primary problem. So we've got the emotional side that you are talking about, but I can tell you with what we see is that sometimes a child that processes slowly, and in a class it will maybe be in a certain teacher's class, everything is always going fast, you know, so it can be that there's certain skill sets that's not developed, and then they're in a classroom and then they cannot, and that's why you say they need to be mindful. But sometimes we also believe you need to go to the primary problem. So slow processing speed can be the cause of anxiety, because especially, like I said, my son had that. Because he's a slow processor, Leon, you know that. As soon as he stepped into the maths class, everything just went blank for him till this day. But luckily, he understands mindfulness now, so we don't see that. Other things, for instance, is, you know, distractions. A lot of visual and auditory distractions can lead that a child gets so anxious that they cannot function. So why I'm saying this is that we are doing a webinar, especially tonight, about that, going to the primary problems. And like you say, we need to look at everything, because there's the emotional side, but there's other sides as well. And I think that's why we work so well together, is because we look at a scenario holistically.
Exactly. Yeah. We have to work together as a multidisciplinary team. And I fully agree with you, you know, and when it comes to the distractions, for instance, when it comes to mindfulness, often when the kids are so anxious, I will tell them, you know, if the kid is a bit older, they're sometimes shy or embarrassed if you tell the teacher, but I sometimes ask the kids themselves when they're older to go to the teacher and to say, I sometimes, you know, I get distracted easily, and then the teacher can maybe move that child, because there is evidence that shows that the position where the child sits in class as well plays a role, like you say, with distractions and all of that. And when the kids get anxious, for instance, I will tell them, I will tell them to focus on the kid in front of you that's sitting in front of you, focus on their hair, you know, just for a moment. When you find yourself stressed of having a blank in a test or something like that, focus on the child in front of you, or their hair, the texture, you know, don't touch the poor kid's hair, but just, you know, just look at it. And then often it's actually grounding. So they just become grounded again, and sometimes they can focus again. So these things are actually, I think we try to make a lot of coping skills much more complicated than it actually is, you know. So you would have seen all the stuff that I showed you is stuff that all of us are able to do. And a lot of people know this, they just don't do it. So that's why it's so important that you do this every single day, that mindfulness becomes a part of your life, you know.
Because it's actually a skill set, because if you practice it, the brain starts learning what it is, and it becomes like driving in your car, and you don't even think about pressing the clutch. You just, you know, you just go, it just happens. And we see it here as well, because As you
Exactly.
know, we teach mindfulness just on another level. And for those of you that's out there that's maybe skeptical about this, because I know Sunell, we're on the same page with this, is that people think this is now hippie stuff, or it works. It works because they understand how it feels and they see the results, like you say. And it makes an enormous difference.
It does. It definitely does. And like I said, in various, like you also say, in various scenarios, we can all benefit from it. And especially, I think, mindfulness has been thrown around quite a lot as a term. We found it in different articles everywhere in newspapers or magazines and stuff. So I think a lot of people would see the term and then they think, oh, I have to be more mindful of another person or something like that. So some people often don't really go into the nitty-gritty part and actually realize it's science, So I was also skeptical. I mean, the first time I went to a conference and they presented a session on mindfulness, I looked at this guy and I was like, I'm not sure I'm buying this, until like I said, in my own life, I actually started to practice it and see the results. I mean, I've got one doctor that she's an oncologist as well. She was finishing her studies and she came to see me because she was so stressed about her studies. And I taught her mindfulness. And she also at first looked at me very skeptical. And she's now practicing in Pretoria. And she often sends me a message just, like once every second week and say, I promise I'm still being mindful. And the one thing that she does, because remember, they are running around like crazy and trying to save lives and all of that. But she taught herself, or we spoke about it, because mindfulness is also about appreciation. So appreciating what you are able to do. She said, and when in between her patients, she obviously has to clean her hands every time or wash her hands. So when she's washing her hands, and she does that several times a day, and now even more, I think, with Corona, when she looks at her hands, for that moment, she's in the moment, she's mindful. And because she does that several times a day, it keeps her grounded and it helps her to get through a tough day where things are very difficult around her in the hospital. So even something as simple as washing your hands and just appreciating that makes a difference, So, and if it works for an oncologist, I'm sure it can work for all of us too, Nay.
You just need to try it or give it a try, That's the thing. Just give it a try.
Exactly. So for those skeptics out there, I would gladly answer their questions. And but like I said, I was a skeptic as well. So it took exercise and it took a willingness to try, an openness. I always tell my patients, just be open. I'm going to teach you things. Just be open about it, or just be open for new things.
So now, thank you so much. And you and I, we said it before, we didn't give up, even though we didn't have power for twice. And we're really excited. And thank you for your time. I know you are extremely busy. So taking an hour out of your day is really appreciated. If anyone has any questions, Sunell is one of our board of professionals in our parent support group. So Sunell is in there, and when she's got time, she answers questions. So if you've got any questions, please come over to the group. There will be a recording going out. I'll send you the links as well. And also this will be placed on Facebook and onto our YouTube channel. And then for those of you that's here and that would like to attend the webinar that Marlies and I are going to do tonight, also you can just go to our Facebook page and do the registration there. And then I want to thank you for taking a time out of your day and listening to wonderful Sunell. So now you just calm and ground me when I listen to you. So thank you for my session for today.
I'm very glad.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.